Hey guys, JK Wargames, and today we're going to review Waterloo, Napoleon's Last Battle. This is a new game by Companion Wargames, who are a new company, and this game is based on the Battle of Waterloo, the French versus the British and the Prussians. So in front of you can see I've got the rulebook and the player aid, and then the map. The map for this game is absolutely fantastic. Very, very vivid and colourful, and captures the Battle of Waterloo in my opinion. So what we're going to do, we're going to have a look at how the game plays, what the counters are like, and then we'll sum up with my final thoughts. So without further ado, let's get into it. So as you can see, the map is split into different zones, and each zone has a number. Now when you're setting up units at the start of the game, you're going to place them in these numbered zones. Also you have these circles with numbers. Now these means these are clear terrain, but you also get numbers with a 3, a square 3. This represents a village. You can see we've got rivers. So units move into different zones. There's no hexes or squares, it's done on zones. So, as you can see, some of these zones have blue victory points. If the French manage to capture one of these zones, then 2 victory points is awarded. So, if you look further down here, these green, if the Allies manage to capture these points, then they are awarded 2 victory points. Also on the board are casualty points. So these excuse me, represent, this tells you all the information you need about casualty points. You then get what actions and impulses you can do, movement costs, and assault results. And then on the right hand side we have Waterloo, Napoleon's Last Battle. We have the sequence of play, commander phase, rally phase, grand battery phase, action phase, and end phase. The green boxes are where the Prussians are placed for when they come in on turn 6. And moving along, here is the impulse track and the victory point track. So units will be awarded, units that are lost, the other side gets a victory point. So if the French knock out the British, they get 1 victory point. If they knocked out another unit, they would get another victory point. If the British knocked out French, it would go back this way. So it's like a tug of war. So an absolutely fantastic map. So what we'll do next is we'll look at the counters for the game. So let's talk about commanders and leaders within the game. Napoleon is the commander of the French army. He is the man in charge. At the start of each turn, a player will roll 2d6 and need an 8 or higher to keep Napoleon active. If you roll lower than an 8, Napoleon is not active for that turn and he cannot provide benefits. Benefits being a +1 to leaders who are attempting to activate their formations. Marshal Ney is a leader. He is in charge of his own formation and they're colour coded. So Marshal Ney's units or formations have yellow. If we had another leader like Relay, his formations are orange. so it's all color coded and very easy to follow. Leaders in the game are one of the main aspects. Every time a leader attempts to activate a unit, 2d6 will be rolled and a 7 or more in Marshal Ney's case will be needed. If this is failed, no action is taken. If it's passed, then the formation or unit can take an action. Also, leaders provide special actions, and these vary, but some are where a unit in a assault can re-roll their 2d6 roll if they are not happy with their result. In this case, Marshal Ney's counter would be flipped. This is Marshal Ney's spent side. He can still activate units, but it is harder because they now need an 8 instead of a 7. When you activate a unit, leaders are not spent. They are only spent if they use a special activation. And also commanders, like Napoleon or Wellington, have special activations. A double move can be attempted by Napoleon or Wellington. The commander will roll 2d6 needing an 8. If passed, Napoleon or Wellington are then spent and reduced to their spent side. In this case, Napoleon cannot be activated again. A double move allows Napoleon to order 2 separate formations on the battlefield to move, assault move, fire a battery, etc. So there are some special actions that can be used. So let's now move on and look at soldier counters. Here we can see a soldier counter. In the top left hand corner is the attack factor, a 4. In the bottom left is the defense value, a 4, and finally on the bottom right is its movement value of 4. Let's now look at an artillery piece. Again, an artillery piece has an attack factor in the top left corner, a 3, its defensive value of 4, and then on the right bottom is its movement factor of 4. Next, let's have a look at cavalry. Here we have a cavalry unit or a lancer unit. Again, stats are the same on most counters. A 3 for its attack factor, 2 for its defense value, and a 6 for its movement. And finally, let's have a look at skirmisher counters. And here we have skirmisher counters. So we have the 95th Rifles and a normal skirmisher unit. The difference being that if a 95th Rifles is reduced, it is reduced to its spent side. If a skirmisher is forced to be reduced to its spent side, it is eliminated. It doesn't get any other benefits, it is removed from the game. Finally, let's look at a leader counter. And here is Picton, a leader counter. As you can see on the left hand side, a 7 is his activation value, and on the right hand side is a +3. Now this can be used in assaults and special actions. Again, a leader will only be spent to its reduced side if a special action is undertaken. And the difference being it's a higher number to try and activate Picton. So now we've looked at counters, let's have a look at how the game plays. After the command phase, we come to the rally phase, and this is where leaders can rally units that have been spent. So in this example, you can see that the 2 French units here are spent, and the 2 of Picton's units are spent in the upper zone. So the leaders have a decision to make. they can reduce to their spent side and rally up to 2 units. So Picton reduces to his spent side, therefore he can rally 2 units within his formation. Lobet, the leader for the French, he will go to his spent side and rally up to 2 units in his formation. Play continues until each player has decided they do not want to rally any more units. Because rallying units, you have to go to your spent side, and when a leader is on his spent side, it is harder to activate. After the rally phase, we have the Grand Battery phase. When we get to the Grand Battery phase, the Grand Battery may open fire. Included in the Grand Battery phase are a certain amount of artillery units. And these are all on their normal side when they are activated. How the Grand Battery works is the player can decide to fire the Grand Battery, or it can decide to move the Grand Battery. If the player opts to fire, so the Grand Battery is going to open fire. Now, normal bombardment rules, the player could fire 1 zone away or 2 zones away. There are exceptions to this, but when a Grand Battery is activated, and only in the Grand Battery phase, the battery can fire indirect fire, and this means that they can fire at certain zones on the map. These are indicated by cannons. As you can see here, space 45 has a cannon, so the Grand Battery are allowed to fire at this with indirect fire. Also space 44 and space 63. Let's have a look at how we go through with the fire action of the Grand Battery. So the Grand Battery are going to fire here at Picton's formation, and how we do this is we take a point unit. So we will take this cannon and his top left firing factor is a 3. So we take a 3 and then we gain a +1 for each fresh supporting artillery unit. So we have another 1, 2, 3, 4. So 4, 5, 6, 7. We have a fire factor of +7. We roll 2d6 and add 7. 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. We have a total of 12 for the Grand Battery. This formation being fired at has a defensive value. It is the value that the unit is in, not the value on the counter. So they have a 1. And this is times by 2. So we have a 2. And we also get a +2 if the primary target is a skirmisher, if the primary target is an artillery, if artillery is using long range fire. So artillery is using long range fire, so we gain a +1. So we have a +3. British roll their 2d6, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So we have 8. The British must take casualty points in the difference between this roll. So 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. They must take 4 casualty points. And this is interesting the way casualty points work. The point unit that the British player will nominate when being fired at was... So the casualty point system, the point unit has to take 1 casualty point to start with. So this is going to reduce him to his spent side. We then have to, it's our decision how we spread the casualty points. So each fresh unit eliminated absorbs 3 casualty points. So we could eliminate one straight away and then just reduce one. But we want to keep as many as our units as we can. Each fresh unit becomes spent absorbs 1 casualty point, which has happened to Lambert. Each spent unit that retreats absorbs 1 casualty point. So Lambert will now retreat, and there are modifications to this, but at the moment that's fine. So that's 2 casualty points. We have 2 left. Each spent unit eliminated absorbs 2, and each skirmisher eliminated absorbs 1. So we have 2 left. We will reduce both of these units. And that is how casualty points are allocated. A nice, interesting system. And it makes a good amount of decisions for the player to really think about what units can soak up these casualty points. So that's a look at the ground battery phase. After the ground battery phase, we get into the main action phase. When we get to the action phase, this is where we're going to roll for leaders. Now the French always are first. So first of all, this is the first impulse, and I will show you the impulse track in a minute, but let's go through how we're going to activate our leaders. So the first thing we're going to do is activate Ney. Now we need a 7 or more to activate Ney. If Napoleon is active, he's going to give us a +1. We'll say Napoleon is active at the moment. We roll 2d6. We've rolled a 9. +1 from Napoleon gives us 10. So Marshal Ney has managed to activate the formation he wants to on the map. As Marshal Ney was successful, this formation in space 57 can now activate, and they are going to perform a move. They can move into this adjacent zone. There are no enemies adjacent to it, so it will only cost 1 movement factor. They move into the space and there are no problems. So they've only used 1 movement factor, and as you can see, Cavalry, they have 6 movement factors. So they have 5 movement factors left. Next, Marshal Ney's formation want to cavalry charge into this Picton's formation. They have 5 movement points left. It cost 4 points to move in to a zone with fresh enemy units. Therefore, the cavalry can move in. So the cavalry will move in with the cavalry charge. The artillery cannot move in the space with the cavalry as part of a cavalry charge, so it becomes spent. And artillery, whenever moving, whenever it gets to its final destination, is always spent. Marshal Ney will now perform a voluntary assault with the cavalry charge. Before we conduct the combat, a unit must conduct a mandatory assault if the area that was not previously contested at the beginning of the current impulse. In this case, Picton's formation was not previously contested, so Ney's formation have to perform a mandatory assault. So again, just like Grand Battery, we're going to choose a point unit. So we're going to choose Colbert with an attack factor of 3. We then gain a +1 for each other cavalry in the attack, fresh. So we now have, we've got 3, 4, 5, 6. We have a +6 on our dice roll. So the French will roll their 2d6 with a +6. We have a total of 13. The British will now roll their defence. The British have a defence factor of a point unit. So again, we'll choose pack. So 4 plus the terrain they are in. So a 2. So 4, 5, 6 plus 1 for each additional fresh unit. So we have 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So the British have a plus 8. They roll 2d6 and unfortunately roll 2. So 8, 9, 10. The British have scored 10. The French scored 13. So the British must soak up 3 casualty points. So the first casualty point will be our point unit. It always has to be the point unit. They are flipped. In this example, we're going to eliminate, in fact, we will put this guy back and we will eliminate this fresh artillery unit because each fresh unit eliminated absorbs 3 casualty points. So therefore we still have our 2 main infantry units active. If the assault was not successful, the point unit is flipped and any other supporting unit is also flipped. So assaults can be dangerous. This time, Ney's cavalry are attacking, but the British have 2 skirmisher units. Whenever an enemy unit moves in to a space with skirmishers, they will receive defensive skirmish fire. How this works is we pick a point unit again, so this skirmish unit here, and we have an attack factor of 1, and then we gain a +2 for each additional skirmishing support unit, so a 3. So we have a +3. The British roll their 2d6 and score a 4. So we have a total result of 7. The French cavalry will roll their defence. Their defence is the terrain being entered, which is a 2, plus if the primary target is a skirmisher, they would get a +1, and then +1 for each skirmisher in an assault, but they don't. So they just have a 2, a +2. They roll their dice and they score a 4, +2 is 6. So the British have a difference of 1. So 1 casualty point must be soaked up by Ney's formation. In this case, this unit becomes spent. Once an impulse has been conducted, the impulse counter will flip to the British side. The British side will now roll 2d6 with a leader of their choice trying to activate one of the formations. If this is failed or passed, after the action, they will roll a sunset die roll, and this needs to be less than what the current impulse is. So in this example, it would be a 3 or less. We rolled 2 dice and we've scored double 6s. So the impulse would carry on. It would flip back to French and move up to 5. The French conduct their action, flips to British, the British conduct actions, and again they now need a 4 or less. If a 4 or less is rolled, that is the end of the action phase and the impulse track is set back to 0, and then we come to the end phase. But before we do that, let's talk about volley fire. A volley fire action is conducted when a unit or formation is in the same zone as an enemy. So let's say Picton passed his leadership check or activation. We're now going to perform volley fire with Pack and Lambert. So we take a point man, we'll take Pack because his attack factor is higher. So we have a 4 and we have a +1 for each supporting fresh infantry unit. So we gain a +1. So we have a +5 to our dice roll. We roll our dice. We score 5, 6, 7. Add the 5 on, that gives us 12. Defensive fire in volley, when a volley fire is being fired, is the ×2 with the defensive value of the zone that you are currently in. So here we have a 1, it will be times by 2, so we have a 2. Plus each 1 each skirmisher in the area, note, and we get a +2 if they were targeting skirmishers, but in this case they're not, so we just have a +2 as the French player. We roll 2d6 and we score 4, 5, 6. So we have 6, the British have 12. We must soak up 6 casualty points, and again the point unit, which we'll say was this, he flips for 1 casualty point. He then retreats for another casualty point. That is 2 casualty points. Next, the middle unit will flip. That's now 3 casualty points. We have 3 more to go. He will retreat. We now have 2 left, so we can flip this guy and then retreat. So we haven't lost any units. We've managed to soak up the fire, and we are disadvantaged and we've had to retreat. After the action phase is the end phase, and this is where we check victory points. Now, 1 victory point is scored for eliminating 1 unit. So if a infantry or artillery or cavalry unit was destroyed on the French side, the British would gain 1 victory point. Let's say they killed 2 more, they'd be on 3 victory points. If the French destroy 4 units, it comes back the way, 1, 2, 3, 4, and the counter flips. So it's a tug of war, a really nice aspect, and provides a lot of tension. Also, we have the turn track. So after each turn, the turn track is going to move up in time. So as you can see, the battle starts at 11, 12, 1, 2, 3, and at 4 o'clock the Prussians arrive. So in turn 6 is when the Prussian reserves arrive. So this really is a case, like it was in the real battle, of the British trying to hang on until the Prussians turn up, and you really do get that feeling in this game, which is a credit to the design of it. So that is the basics of how the game works. Now I'm going to sum up with my final thoughts. So Waterloo, Napoleon's last battle. What are my thoughts? I think this is a brilliant game. If you're into Napoleonics or you're fascinated by the Battle of Waterloo, this game is for you. This really does represent the Battle of Waterloo in miniature. Fantastic design. Components are amazing. Like I said at the start, the map is so vivid. It's beautiful. It's a lovely map. So credit to Companion Wargames. They put out an amazing game here. So if you enjoyed this one, guys, make sure to like, comment and subscribe. I've been JK Wargames, and I'll see you in the next video.